Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Escondido City Council. Please rise for a moment of reflection and remain standing for the flag salute.
Yes, please join me in a moment of reflection. We come together tonight to say thank you. Thank you for the privilege, the blessing, the honor it is to serve here in the city of Escondido. We come together tonight as a diverse community, a community of different backgrounds, different beliefs, different presents, and different futures, yet one common goal, that is the betterment of this city. We come together tonight to seek guidance, wisdom, and discernment during the deliberations that transpire this evening, and in doing so, we lift up Councilmember Fitzgerald, Councilmember Joe Garcia, Councilmember Christian Garcia, Deputy Mayor Martinez, and Mayor White. May they be granted peace and wisdom as they lead our city into a bright and prosperous future. Amen.
Please repeat with me the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting is called to order. We'll do a quick roll call. Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Present.
Councilmember Joe Garcia.
Present.
Councilmember Christian Garcia.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Present.
And I, Mayor White, am here. Do we have a report out of closed session for tonight?
No public report. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. We'll move on to non-agenda public comments.
Yes, we have four. Our first speaker is Jovina Rossini.
Good evening, Council. My name is Trevino Rossini.
One moment, Jovina. It is, let me unmute, make sure it's on.
Oh.
I'll reset your timer. Sorry, please go ahead.
No worries. Are we on?
Should be on now.
All right. Good evening, Council. My name is Trevino Rossini. I'm the owner of Kettle on Grand Avenue here in the heart of Escondido. A little bit about us. We're a coffee shop with the goal of serving the community here in Esco. I took over Kettle Coffee and Tea about 2 years ago with the excitement and eagerness to bring the core value of community to the city of Escondido. With that, we've hosted a skate competition where we shut the street down, brought in members from USA Skateboarding and put something on for the youth here. We've done movie premieres, local vendor events. Our goal is to bring people together in a public space here in the heart of downtown. I'm here today to talk about the Grand Avenue Vision project, the construction that just concluded. Some quick facts about it. The stakeholders were approached in 2015 and council approved the project in 2018. This was 7 years before it took place. I took over in 2023 and found out a week before that the construction was going to be taking place. We decided to stay open during this time. The goal was to provide a place for community members to still enjoy, as well as serve our team. We have a team of all Escondido locals that pay rent here, spend their money here, and need to be able to survive economic uncertainty. During the project, we had some access issues, despite the fact that that was promised to be maintained. There was no clear path to our front door. We don't have alley access, having a unique building. Our vendors had to park blocks away and carry produce into the shop. We had construction issues. There were crew members washing their trucks, drinking beers during their shifts. And over the course of 7 months of construction, we felt a major and directly correlated financial impact, losing over $100,000. I liquidated my retirement, took on credit card debt to hang on and survive the construction project. But I'm not here to complain this evening. I'm here to propose some solutions. So one of the motives of the project was to, quote, boost the economic vitality of our downtown area. And while that may take place over time, so far it's only hurt local small businesses. The first step that we can take to get back to ground floor is to make an amendment to the budget program. I'm proposing that we add a grant program to this year's fiscal budget to help reimburse businesses that experience losses as a result of the construction project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we're going to take one moment just to make sure the microphone situation is
Yeah,
resolved.
and if not, can we have them use the microphone
Yeah,
next to it?
I'll bring a handheld mic so we can keep the time going.
Perfect.
Yeah. Our next speaker is going to be Gary Cass. Test.
Good evening, Council.
thank you for all you do, Councilman and Mayor, and just wanted to thank you and the staff for all that you've done. Just last month, we had a wonderful event here called the National Day of Prayer, and some of you were able to attend, and I want to thank you for being able to make that. And on behalf of the 12 participating churches, I want to thank you, and go ahead and put it on your calendar for next year. So on the first Thursday in May of 2026, we hope to be back, and maybe even more churches participating. We're also reaching out to some of the private schools as well, that they might be able to enjoy that event. And so you're cordially invited and thanked. I'm speaking to an issue as just for myself, as a resident and as a pastor of a local church. I want to make sure Escondido doesn't turn into what we see happening in Los Angeles. And as some of you know, there's a demonstration that's scheduled to be here in our community on Saturday in Grape Day Park. And apparently this is in cooperation with other demonstrations that are going to take place across the country. As somebody who has very much enjoyed my First Amendment liberties, I'm not here to try to urge anything other than that we respect the rights of people to gather and demonstrate. And I certainly think it would be inappropriate. It is Flag Day. It would be a terrible and a very egregious thing for on Flag Day for someone to be deprived of their rights. But also what would be equally tragic would be if people are harmed, if there's any violence, or any destruction of any property, and especially, having watched what's on TV, seeing the kinds of things that are being directed against police and first responders, I want to urge the council to please adopt a zero-tolerance policy towards any illegal activity. Peaceful demonstration, First Amendment rights, you've got everybody's support. But nobody wants to see all the hard work, all the redevelopment work that happened in downtown. Apparently they may be walking through downtown. We don't want to see Escondido turn into Los Angeles. And I especially, because I have friends, neighbors whose sons and work on the police force, I really want to urge a very robust and direct response to any attacks, any battery of any kind directed towards any of our law enforcement members. So I appreciate your leadership. The first job of civil government is to protect us, protect our rights, and certainly we affirm them, but also to protect our persons and our property. And I look forward to seeing you demonstrate that kind of leadership, especially in such a volatile situation.
Thank you, sir. Your time has expired. Thank you.
Our next speaker scheduled, Eduardo, did you want to speak? I know you clicked the box, do not want to register opinion, Eduardo? Oh, do you want to speak? Okay, perfect. Yeah, just want to make sure you have that chance. Come on up.
Good evening, City Councilman and Mayor. My name is Everardo Flores. I am here speaking today as a concerned resident of Escondido. I was born in the Palomar Hospital and I was raised here for the entirety of my life. And I have interacted with numerous residents of Escondido who are undocumented. Immigrants aren't criminals. They have always been an integral part of our community, so I came today to ask, what actions are you three Republican council members taking to protect our undocumented community in Escondido? Escondido is home to mixed status families, and the Escondido Police Department has had a history of working with ICE. As Latino Republicans who ran on being for Latino communities, are you against our undocumented communities, or are you with? Are you against this unfolding dictatorship, or are you with it? Your silence is inaction. Do better than being on Facebook.
Our next speaker is Greg Oliver.
Good evening, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. especially as public engagement becomes increasingly vital. I'm here regarding the May 21st budget review, Measure I funds, and the justification stated in the ballot title, which was that the funds would go to public safety, addressing homelessness, improving infrastructure, increasing police, fire, and paramedic, reducing traffic congestion, and maintaining parks and open spaces. Our community overwhelmingly approved Measure I for these vital objectives, but as the May 21st budget review highlighted, for years our city budget struggled to keep pace. This has led to tough cuts, freezes, and deferred maintenance on everything from fire trucks to roof repairs. It's likely that we dip below a minimum level of service in some areas, leaving many city workers to just do the best they could. Many voters, unaware of the extent of this dip, may have thought Measure I was for new services. However, these funds were desperately needed just to stop the bleeding for our basic services. The challenge now is ensuring that these funds truly deliver. While the ordinance specifies general government use, granting you all broad discretion, the public's vote articulated specific expectations. Councilman Garcia shared the community's call for transparency for this during the May 21st workshop. So I urge the City Council to develop and document strategies for each of the 6 Measure I goals that I mentioned, consisting of an initial outline or a rough plan that includes a vision statement defining the optimal future state, an analysis of the current state describing where we are now, notional milestones that describe the path from the current to the future, and a clear definition of a minimum level of service, a bright line that we commit not to drop below again, and well-reasoned cost estimates separated into one-time and ongoing expense categories. This framework is standard for a well-managed organization. It provides essential transparency, helping the Citizens Oversight Committee and the public generally track progress. While I respect the Oversight Committee's role, the twice-a-year meeting requirement is likely inadequate for truly proactive oversight. Having led large organizations in similar work for over 40 years, I've seen challenges where a committee reviews months of work only to find that you're off track and identify a need to rewind. Upfront outlines are crucial. They'll make the committee's work and public oversight truly effective, and I appreciate your time.
No further public on this item.
All right, thank you, everybody, for your comments. We'll now move on to the consent calendar. Items 1 through 8 are on consent. Does anybody need to pull anything from the consent calendar? If not, I'll ask for a motion. Or I'll make the motion and ask for a second. Perfect. Motion and second.
Voting
Please
is open.
vote.
Yeah. Motion approved, 5-0.
Okay, that takes us to our first workshop, which is item number 9, our 5-year capital improvement program and fiscal year 25-26 capital improvement program budget status.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. My name is Lynn Cruz, accountant for the City of Escondido, and with me is Jonathan Schaubel, City Engineer, Stephanie Roman, Assistant Director of Utilities, Construction and Engineering, and Vinny Bernabio, Management Analyst for the City of Escondido. Today, we are here to discuss the preliminary 5-year capital improvement program and budget. Our presentation will provide an overview of the capital improvement program. We'll highlight completed projects and update you on existing priority projects. We will present available revenues and the staff budget recommendations for this year and conclude with a brief demonstration of our capital projects dashboard. Before we get into the details of the fiscal year's budget, we are going to start by defining some terminology. Staff are going to be more intentional moving forward in making a distinction between a capital project and an ongoing capital program. Today, capital projects are one-time investments in physical infrastructure, like building a new splash pad. Each project has a defined location, timeline, and budget. Ongoing capital programs are initiatives that provide planning, oversight, and/or maintenance support for infrastructure improvements. For example, the pavement management program helps determine which streets should be repaved based on road conditions. These programs receive regular, often annual, funding. The city's overall capital improvement program currently consists of 72 projects and 24 ongoing programs, totaling $94.7 million, spanning over multiple years and various stages: conceptualization, planning, design, and construction. These capital improvements are budgeted for, often with a combination of many different funding sources, and executed by a multi-departmental team of staff, at times with the assistance of outside consultants and contractors. Tonight we'll present our recommendations for future CIP investments. The city's current project and program portfolio totals $94 million, with $77 million allocated to projects and $17 million to programs. The Capital Improvement Program is a long-term planning tool used to guide the funding, design, and development of infrastructure projects and ongoing programs that often span multiple years. Program budgets are forecasted over a 5-year period, allowing time to refine concepts, complete designs, and plan construction. Every year, the city adopts an annual budget that allocates funding for that fiscal year and sets priorities for future investments. This slide shows how a capital project is funding as a one-time investment, whereas programs are ongoing initiatives. As a reminder, there are a number of factors that guide development of the preliminary capital improvement program budget. Recommendations for project selection, timing, and prioritization are made based on priorities set in plans adopted by the City Council that include the general plan, mobility element, master plans, specific plans, and the local roadway safety plan. Priorities are also guided by community and stakeholder input and City Council direction. In addition, the draft CIP program is developed considering the timing necessary to develop projects, bandwidth of staff to deliver projects, grant funding deadlines, and timing to complete full project funding. Although these are all considerations, their influence varies depending on the nature of the project. For example, the splash pad evolved out of community and stakeholder input and council direction, whereas other projects give greater weight to the complexity and constructability. I'm now going to turn it over to Jonathan to give you a preview of completed projects in fiscal year 25.
Based on guidance from the Budget Subcommittee, all of our tables will be presented in order of completion date. Here is a list of 10 capital projects and 1 program that were completed in fiscal year 2025. The Grand Avenue Vision Phase 2 project will have a grand opening celebration this Friday at 5:30, which also coincides with the first Cruisin' Grand event of the year. The emergency fencing of Escondido Creek between Citricado Parkway and Harmony Grove will be completed by the end of this month. All of the lights for the Juniper Street Lighting Project have been installed. However, SDG&E has not yet energized the lights on the southernmost 2 blocks of the project. That's between 7th and 9th. As part of the city's ongoing annual street maintenance program, 34 lane miles were resurfaced, 1,900 linear feet of sidewalk was replaced, and 6,000 feet of bike lanes were refreshed or added in the east-south zone of the city. When we return to the City Council next week for the CIP budget adoption, we'll take a deeper dive into these completed projects with more details and pictures. Now we're going to move on to the currently active capital projects and programs. The projects and ongoing programs listed in the next few slides have been previously approved, are currently funded, and in various phases of development. Most are already fully funded, however, some will require additional funds to complete, and those will be highlighted later in the presentation when we talk about revenue projections and budget recommendations. This table shows 5 parks projects which are all currently in design or bidding phases. The splash pad at Grove Park has been delayed from the original schedule due to environmental review and County Department of Health project review. The splash pad just completed the bidding phase last week and will be brought to council to award a construction contract next month. The city currently has 5 transportation capital projects in design phase and 4 programs in various stages of development. The traffic signal communications master plan will be completed in the next couple of months. However, implementation of the signal communications improvements, which are recommended in that master plan, will continue through mid-2026. The South Escondido Access Improvement Project is partially grant funded and will construct a traffic signal at Center City Parkway and South Escondido Boulevard and a signalized pedestrian crossing at the adjacent intersection of Center City Parkway and Brotherton Road. Now we're moving on to capital projects that are in the construction phase. At this time, the city has 4 capital projects which are currently under construction, excluding utilities, and 1 program that is in construction. The play equipment has been replaced at Jesmond Dean, Washington, and Westside Parks. However, rubberized play surface and fencing are the last items of work to be completed. This summer, the annual street maintenance program will repave and rehabilitate roads in the Central North, or CN, maintenance zone, which is bounded by State Route 78 to the north, I-15 to the west, Ash Street on the east, and 5th Avenue to the south.
This slide summarizes utilities, water, and wastewater CIP projects that are currently in design, bid, or construction phase. The recycled water Easterly Agriculture Distribution System project is currently in construction with estimated project completion by end of calendar year 2025. The treated water interconnect project is in the design phase with estimated completion by mid-calendar year 2027. The alley utilities replacement project is still considered to be in the design phase. However, this project does have a completed design package and is transitioning into the bid and construction phases. The estimated construction completion date of this project is early calendar year 2028. The A3 Reservoir Elimination Project is in the design phase with estimated construction completion by end of calendar year 2028. The Lake Wolford Dam Replacement Project is also still considered to be in the design phase. However, like the alley utilities replacement project, the Lake Wolford Dam Replacement Project has a completed design package as well as a construction management team on board and is transitioning into the bid and construction phases. The estimated construction completion is mid-calendar year 2029. And the lift station number 1 and sewer force main replacement project is currently in the pre-design phase. With planning studies already executed, next steps will be to get this project into the design phase. Estimated construction completion for this project is mid-calendar year 2029.
In this next section of the presentation, we will outline the available revenue and present staff's recommendation for the allocation of those revenues. In most cases, the staff's recommendation is to allocate available funding into existing and/or ongoing projects, not only to continue to fund those projects that have already been prioritized, but also to honor previous commitments to completing prioritized projects. As we noted at the beginning of the presentation, the capital improvement program and budget consists of specific funding sources that are restricted by certain guidelines and regulations, or sources that were committed by council for a specific purpose. For example, when new development occurs in the city, Development impact fees are collected for specific purposes, such as public art, park development, traffic impact, drainage facilities, and public facilities fees. For water and wastewater projects, they're funded by customer user fees, and in some instances, reimbursements from the neighboring areas that share some of our facilities. The Utilities Department will also utilize a low-interest loans for financing some of their larger projects. This chart identifies those restricted revenue sources that are allocated towards street-related projects. The largest source of street revenue for the city is about $5.5 million from transit allocations for fiscal year 2026. These resources are legally restricted to expenditures for street, pedestrian, and bicycle transportation programs. At the preliminary operating budget workshop on May 21st, staff recommended allocating $2 million in Measure I funds towards the city's street program. Measure I local district tax funds are shown in orange at the far right of the table and are unrestricted sources of funds.
Staff is recommending that the $2 million in Measure I funds be allocated to the existing street maintenance project, which is starting construction this summer. Staff is currently evaluating the city's pavement network to identify the streets that are in the poorest condition to add to that project. This $2 million would allow the upcoming maintenance project to repave approximately 8 additional lane miles of asphalt roadways in all 4 council districts.
The city receives funding for street projects from Transnet allocations, which are allocated by a half-cent county sales tax and administered by SANDAG to fund local transportation projects consistent with the regional plan. There is around $5.2 million in available funds consisting of transit allocations and an ending fund balance that includes interest and other activities. These Transnet dollars are allocated to existing projects or annual programs. The Escondido Creek Drainage Capacity Project will improve 6 miles of storm drains to alleviate localized flooding and to improve safety for areas surrounding Escondido Creek. The funds allocated to this project will be used as local matching funds for federal funds allocated to this project in the current federal budget. The city will receive an allocation of around $3.6 million for the SB1 road maintenance and rehab funds for transportation, which is administered by the state of California. All of these funds are being recommended for allocation into the pavement maintenance and rehabilitation program. The city will receive an allocation of around $4.6 million for the highway users tax account, also known as gas tax, which is administered by the state of California. All resources are legally restricted for street-related expenditures within the public rights of way. As a reminder, in order to continue to receive these funds, the city has to provide matching general fund dollars to maintenance of efforts, $5,061,000. The Traffic Infrastructure Program funds the installation of signs, striping, and other traffic-related infrastructure citywide. Because the program had an available balance last budget cycle, no additional funds were allocated in fiscal year 25. However, traffic infrastructure work did continue throughout the year by utilizing that available balance.
There's about $2.5 million in traffic impact fees that are projected to be collected from developers in FY26, which are allocated to the projects shown. The mobility element update, planned to be completed by the end of this year, will result in a prioritized list of street improvement projects required to meet future transportation demands for build-out of the city. The mobility element implementation program sets aside funding annually for design, environmental review, and construction of the highest priority arterial improvements. The construction of the Citricado Parkway extension is complete. However, the project has ongoing change order negotiations with the contractor. In addition, funds are needed to pay for CEQA mitigation measures, requiring the city to perform ongoing maintenance and monitoring of the creek vegetation for 5 years. As I mentioned earlier, the South Escondido Access Improvement Project will construct a traffic signal at Center City Parkway and South Escondido Boulevard and a signalized pedestrian crossing at Center City Parkway and Brotherton Road. The city's drainage master plan is about 30 years old. This funding will start the development of a new drainage master plan by analyzing the capacity of the existing drainage system and assessing the need for future improvements. The La Honda Drainage Project budgets funds toward the city's reimbursement of storm drain improvements to the developer of Tract 920. In 2023, the developer constructed a reinforced box culvert system in La Honda Drive from El Norte Parkway to Lincoln to prevent flooding in the area. Per the terms of a previous agreement with the developer, the city will reimburse the developer for 2/3 of the total cost in 2 future installments.
There are $9.2 million available for allocation in these specific funds for non-street projects.
Due to cost escalation, as identified by recent cost estimates, these 3 parks projects all require more funding to be completed. As I said in an earlier slide, the splash pad at Grove Park just opened bids last week, and a construction contract will be brought to council for approval next month, with construction soon to follow. This table shows staff's recommendation to program the fiscal year 2026 public facilities funds into these 3 projects or programs. These funds will be used for ongoing funding for new library circulating materials and for improving our citywide traffic signal communication. Upgrading traffic signal communication will install new signal controllers and a high-speed communication system for existing traffic signals, which will lead to smoother traffic flow through the city.
The Utilities Department has approximately 20 active water CIP programs and projects with a total budget of approximately $95 million. However, not all projects and programs require funding requests in fiscal year 2026. What is shown on this slide are one-time projects that staff are requesting additional funding for in the fiscal year 2026 CIP budget. For the 2026 fiscal year, a total of $6,700,000 from the Water Enterprise Fund Reserve is requested to fund 3 projects: the Treated Water Interconnect Project, the Alley Utilities Replacement Project, and the Lake Wolford Dam Replacement Project. In addition, the city is in the process of applying for a Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, or WIFIA loan, in the amount of $96,434,254 for the Wolford Dam Replacement Project. An update on this project will be presented to City Council at a future meeting. The Utilities Department has approximately 25 active wastewater CIP programs and projects with a total budget of approximately $35 million. However, again, not all require funding requests in the fiscal year 2026. What is shown on this slide are utilities wastewater annual or ongoing CIP programs and one-time CIP projects that staff are requesting additional funding for in the fiscal year 2026 CIP budget. A total of $3,346,000 is requested from the Wastewater Enterprise Fund Reserve to fund the 5 programs and 2 projects shown on this slide, including the citywide storm drain maintenance program, the lift station major maintenance program, the manhole rehabilitation program, the outfall maintenance program, the permitted channel maintenance and mitigation program, the alley utilities replacement project, and the lift station number 1 and force main replacement project.
Here we are showing grant funding requests that were submitted within the last year for the 3 projects shown. We anticipate receiving award notification by the middle of fiscal year 26. The total fiscal year 2026 projected general fund revenue allocated towards identified general fund CIP projects and programs is $23.9 million, funding 24 projects and programs. The total fiscal year 2026 projected enterprise funds revenue allocated toward identified utility CIP projects and programs is $10 million, funding 10 projects and programs. This does not include the $96 million WIFIA loan. With the inclusion of fiscal year 26 project and program allocations, the city's total capital portfolio amounts to $128 million, comprising $94 million for capital projects and $34 million for capital programs.
All right. So now I'd like to share a demonstration of our upcoming capital improvement dashboard.
Vinny, can you introduce yourself? Because I think this is the
And
first time.
It's nice to meet everybody here. My name is Vinny Bernabeo, Management Analyst with the City Manager's Office. I'll be introducing our upcoming capital improvement dashboard, and this aims to enhance transparency and consistency in our CIP portfolio, providing the public with access to large-scale projects across the city. So when the tool loads, there's a brief kind of user's guide here that will help guide anybody visiting the page how to access it, how to read the legend, and basic functionality. But when we get in here, the first thing and really the main focus of this tool is the interactive GIS map. It's broken down by the various council districts and the pavement zones, some of which encompass all 4 council districts. So there are a few different ways to interact with the projects in this tool. One can click on the project geographically if they're interested in something going on in their area, which will then zoom in on that project and bring up a detailed overview on it. This overview includes what status that the project's in, whether that's design, construction, or complete. It also gives an overview that includes the scope and scale of the project as well as what it hopes to achieve. There also will be current updates that are also time-stamped, and again, as this is just a snapshot in time, the data on these projects hasn't quite been updated, but as part of this initiative, another thing that we're working on is determining the cadence to have real-time, in-the-moment updates so that we can be providing the most relevant and timely details on projects. Another way.
Vinny, I just want to give those council members a heads up. This is a test phase of this tool. The tool will become live after the beginning of the fiscal year. Vinny will be leading our capital projects conversations with the community. This will be an important tool in that conversation to demonstrate where the projects are and what phase they are in. So what you're seeing is a test environment and an example of that tool that we will be starting to utilize very shortly after July 1. So this will be a tool that will be on the city's website, able to access. You'll be able to get the data of the project and the real-time status of it. And what Vinny's referencing is we have a tool. Now we have to figure out how to make sure the tool stays current on a monthly basis. So all the data that you're seeing was test data pulled from a while ago to create the tool. So it is not live or interactive yet. It will be live and interactive shortly after the beginning of the fiscal year.
Thank you. So another way that we can interact and view projects on this dashboard, other than clicking a project on the map, there's this panel here. It shows the projects, shows our unique identifier as well as the status. So if we click on that, it zooms us in on the map where that project is. And then again, pulls up these case details, shows the status, the overview, those time-stamped updates that Sean mentioned, as well as what type of project it is. So for example, this Grand Avenue Vision Plan is a transportation project, as well as the funding sources, the total project cost estimate, and our estimated date of completion. There will also be links to dedicated project-specific sites for some of the projects, as well as contacts to reach out to staff to get in touch with somebody here at the city for more details on those projects should you need them. And lastly, you can search for projects through all these various parameters, such as their project type. So you could project name, or the status that they're currently in, or even by completion date. And again, so this is in the test environment. We are still in development of this, but we are working on developing a cadence and a schedule to where we can ensure that this information is updated in a very timely, close as possible to real-time basis for our public and for the council. So this concludes staff's presentation, and it is recommended that City Council authorize staff to move forward with preparing the fiscal years 2026 through 2030 5-year capital improvement program and budget, returning with the final document on June 18th, 2025 for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this?
None.
Okay. I'll open it up for discussion amongst the council. We received this presentation yesterday in the Budget Subcommittee, so I'll turn it over to the rest of you.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
thank you. Well, I want to thank the team, Jonathan, Lynn, Stephanie, and welcome, Vinny. Excellent presentation, and I had the opportunity to sit with Economic Development the other day, Jennifer Schoenig, the director, and she was showing me how we have gone live with that part of it as well, with permits and licensing and such. So it's really exciting to see that this is going to be another tool for the public to use. And today at the Government Affairs meeting or luncheon that I spoke at, we spoke about those things. And so the community is really waiting and excited about this. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask about, it was on slide 22. It was mentioned that the Citricado Parkway extension costs, that there were, what I understood was that there may have been some additional costs because of problems with the service provider or something like that. Can you explain that a little bit more? I'm curious to see how much that cost has been. Has it gone over?
So basically, the contractor is in dispute with the city on various change orders. And so even though the work is complete, we've been going back and forth with the contractor. Sometimes some of the claims are legitimate. In those cases, we work with them, we pay them. Some cases, we don't agree that they're legitimate costs, and then we push back. And then some months can go by, and then they'll resubmit, in their backup documentation, and our construction manager will have to go through all this documentation and sort out what's legitimate and what's not. Mm-hmm. So that's why there's this kind of big lag. Even though the project, the landscaping, and the final improvements were done, a couple months ago, we're still kind of dragging out this construction claims and, I should say, change orders.
Was there something built into that in case of something like this happening?
Yeah,
because my concern is as far as if they're going to keep submitting more and more invoices and how much more that's going to cost.
Yeah, there is a procedure laid out in the contract documents for going towards mediation if we can't come to an agreement.
And if I could jump in as well. Yeah, there's going to be a certain point in time when there's effectively a refusal with respect to how much we're willing to pay for these change orders. Some of that work we are responsible for, and some of it's not. And so my office will get involved at that point, and then we'll work with the department staff to make sure that we're paying only those claims that are required.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, let's see here. On the Lake Wolford Dam replacement fees, it sounds like a lot when you look at it, but what year was it built? Remind me, because I took a tour of Lake Wolford.
Good evening, Angela Morrow, Director of Utilities. So Lake Wolford Dam was originally constructed in 1894. It was then widened and raised in 1924.
And the population back then, I assume, was maybe 500 when it was built. I don't know. All that to say, and I'm just making this point for anybody that's listening, it does sound like a lot, but we have to think about our city and our city's needs. And even with the improvements that were made during all those years, we're talking some homes that are built in the 50s, 60s, and so on. And so when people see those numbers, I want them to understand that it is for their benefit and also their safety. We don't want those pipes to burst. And so I just want to make a point to let people know why it is that it is such a big expense and how important it is. So thank you. That's all I have, and I appreciate your presentation. Thank you so much.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you for the presentation, and nice to meet some of you that I'm meeting for the very first time. So let's see, on the, let's go on, we'll start with the street maintenance, I guess maps. The ones that go, the one you mentioned about East-South zone, if we can go back to that slide.
Was that the completed project?
Yeah, it said complete on it. I have complete
Yeah.
next to my notes. Okay. Yeah, so street maintenance. So where do we, in that tool that Vinny showed us, he also talked about maps. Is that street maintenance map the map that was in the tool? Was that the same, are we talking about the same map? It is?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And then just on the status of complete, for example, I see a couple things on here that we've been waiting for a while. One of them being the Rose and Washington new street light.
Traffic signal
Yeah, the
at
traffic
Washington
signal,
Rose?
yes.
Yeah,
So
that's
if-
on another slide.
Could we see that slide as well?
Sure.
I had a question on that.
It's in the
I know
construction
it's a lot.
slide.
There it is, yes. So here, Washington and Rose traffic signal, I know we recently awarded a bid for that. And then, and this one is one of those things that does get delayed. So I would say that this is a 3-year timeline for this. So right now it says, I'm trying to understand the status and the definition of what they mean, the parameters for these definitions. So Washington and Rose traffic signal, it's taken about 3 years since it was approved by council. It says status construction, and then it says end of 2025. So right now, can you give me an example of like what the status is now? Because I don't see any like construction crews
Yeah.
out there. So that's, and then from now until the end of 2025, we're talking almost 6 months. So
Sure.
kind of what parameters does this status construction entail?
Yeah, so basically, once we've awarded the contract, then we're moving into construction phase. So we get that contract fully executed. Then we meet with the contractor. We have a pre-construction meeting. They start submitting the technical documents for what they're going to actually build, make sure it meets our requirements. So we've already started that process. They have an approved encroachment permit. They have to apply for a permit to work in the city's right-of-way.
Okay.
We've gone through that. They have an approved traffic control plan, which means, they have set up cones and make sure it's safe when they're out there working. You're right, you don't see any work out there yet, but there are things happening in the background.
Okay.
The next step is in the next few weeks, they're going to go out and do exploratory borings at the location of the specific poles, and they call that potholing. So they're going to make sure that there's nothing underneath there that's going to be in the way when they build that deep foundation for those big traffic signal poles.
Okay.
And then, once they ordered the reason the end of '25 seems kind of far out is because there's a long lead time on traffic signal poles and equipment.
Okay.
Right now, we're looking at about 4 or 5 months. Now, they can be doing work, like I said, the pedestrian improvements. Part of this project is doing the curb ramps. You know, they have to install conduits so they can pull wires across the street to make sure that all 4 legs of this intersection work. So there are some things that they'll be working on, but they do have this long lead time, unfortunately, for the poles. So that's why you're seeing an end of 2025.
Got it, thank you. That's helpful. So status is really a phase. It's more like a phase, right? There's lots of things that happen in the construction phase.
Yes, and
right?
so and construction would be generally when you bring bringing the contractor under contract through the completion of the project. And that's why when we're working on how to bring more real-time updates during that phase in the tool so that the tool is reflective of the various phases that we're in. That can be a labor-intensive process. So we're trying to figure out how to streamline that so that the data moves in and folks are getting the most frequently updated, because it is a phase of a project, right? The design is a phase, and this is the construction phase, and there are going to be many elements in that phase. But without that detailed update, you'll be asking the questions you are, Deputy Mayor, consistently. You'll look at it.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that the tool is reflective of more nuance under that construction header.
Thank you. This is a wonderful tool that I'm very excited about, because I get asked these questions, and then I won't have to be emailing and asking these questions. It'll be easily found by the public, so they won't need, they can get the information directly. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's great. And then yes, I'm glad you have this up, because the street maintenance map, which is this, you mentioned there was one that was complete, and it was the east-south, so that would be the one in the light blue, right? Great.
That's
Okay,
correct.
Great. Great to know that that's what you're referencing there. And then I just had a question on traffic signal wireless radio. Can you just share briefly what that is? It was on there as well. Because there's so much that goes into traffic signals.
So what's happening is our signals, unfortunately, is very old technology. And so we're trying to get our signals to connect to like a central controller, which most cities have, where you can see in real time what's happening from your office or from a traffic management center. And right now we don't have communication because we've got some really old equipment. We've got some communication issues. The radios are a way to get that communication going as a sort of a stopgap interim measure. Ultimately, we'll have all of our signals on the fiber optic network that's being installed throughout the city. You've heard about that, I'm sure.
Yes. Great. Okay, so this is the in between for that. That's great. And definitely something I hear a lot about is our traffic signals needing improvement. Really excited about the splash pad, and just one suggestion, and it may not necessarily be to your team, but this tool is going to be great when people ask about status on projects, but also on big things like this. This would be our first splash pad, and I know a lot of our community is very excited about it. They had expected, I think, for it to be done this summer, and unfortunately it won't. I wish it was, because it's going to be hot. But maybe having something saying, coming soon, or here's a QR code for the splash pad that's now coming at the end of, I heard today end of the year, but now it says in your slide for beginning of 2026. But just, getting people still excited about it, but also maybe pointing them into this tool and where they can find updates. So maybe for some of those really big projects that have a lot of interest, we could do something like that. You answered my question about what in construction means. And then just another question, I don't know if it belongs under the CIP budget, but in the past we've had conversations about our climate action plan and the need for long-range planner. Does that fall under CIP, or would that fall under a different budget?
That's in the operating budget.
Operating budget. Okay, thank you. And then one more, let's see here that I had. Let me find it real quick. The traffic priority list budget, would that fall under capital improvements? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I don't, do we have an amount assigned to that here? I don't recall seeing it. The
So you're-
traffic,
You're talking about traffic signals?
yeah, the traffic, so there's a 50,000, I remember, I think it comes through the Traffic Safety Commission.
Oh, yes, that's a separate line item.
Yeah, does it fall anywhere in that chart you showed? Because I remember that being something that goes to the Traffic Safety Commission, and they have every year, I recall $50,000 budgeted. And that was, I think that goes towards the traffic signals. I believe that's what part of what we use for the Washington and
I
Ash.
found this. So there's an item, it's a program, it's an annual program, and we
Okay.
put in a small amount of money each year.
Yes.
And the Transportation and Community Safety Commission, they get to pick their projects with their own prioritization, and then those projects are implemented.
Yes.
And they're typically around schools and trying to increase safety for pedestrians and bikes. They're not traffic signals.
Got it. Their traffic safety project, do those, it's $50,000, is that what's being proposed this time?
It's been 50,000 per year for as long as I've been here and for the foreseeable future.
And then how, every year, do those, whatever they decide gets allotted to that budget, does it get completed within the year? Is that enough, I guess?
I'd have
I'm
to
asking.
check the exact projects as they're completed, but I know we have been implementing those
Okay, good.
on an
Because
annual basis.
I would be, maybe I would like more information for the next time it comes back to see, what kind of projects we have funded and to see, I'm trying to see if 50,000 is a good amount or if maybe we should bump it up a little bit. So some information for context on the kind of projects it funds and how, maybe how many requests we receive, because then that gives me an idea of we might, be able to increase that budget a little bit. Because I know 50,000 in the scheme of a lot of what we're saying isn't very much to get things completed. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you for the presentation. Very informative. I do want to echo what my colleague said. The map is actually a really cool tool. I think it's going to be very good for the public. It's very informative. It's very clean and concise. And just like my colleague said, I get a lot of inquiries about project status and updates and everything. So I think this is really, really good, valuable tool to be able to point to and to use, not just for them, but for ourselves as well while we're studying and doing our research. So thank you for the presentation. I know it takes a lot of work, and I think you guys did a great job. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I look forward to the final adoption next week. Thank you for the presentation. We don't need to vote on this, right? Okay. Then we'll move on to our current business. Item 11, which is request for authorization to file a Smart Growth Incentive Program grant application for grant funds and acceptance of terms of grant agreement.
And while you're coming up, if anyone was here for item number 10, that item has been continued to June 25th, just for your awareness.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I meant to say that.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. My name is Veronica Moronis, and I am our city planner. And I'll be presenting agenda item 11 to you this evening, which is a request of the council to authorize submittal for the Smart Growth Incentive Program grant for a specific proposal. So for this evening's item, I do have a quick agenda here. We're going to go over what the request is before the council this evening. We're going to talk about what a housing trust fund is, because that is a component of the request and it's not a common term or mechanism for most folks. Then we're going to go into the grant opportunity itself, just a little bit of background, and delve more deeply into the specific proposal request, discuss next steps, and then have opportunity for questions. So the request before the council is to authorize staff to submit an application for a grant opportunity to fund the creation of the East Valley Specific Plan Housing Trust Fund, in addition to accepting the grant agreement terms as identified in the agenda packet. So before we delve into all the specifics, just to give everyone a general baseline of what we're talking about tonight, what is a housing trust fund? A housing trust fund is a mechanism that's used by several different agencies across the country to facilitate housing development specifically, typically for low or moderate income households. A housing trust fund will typically provide a more flexible form of funding for local housing needs, thereby allowing for more local control. It is tied to a dedicated funding source, so something that is attributing continuously or on a more recurring basis into the fund itself. And housing trust funds have been around for several decades. They were established by governments local governments and regional governments back in the 1970s. So segueing over to what the grant opportunity is before the city, it is SANDAG's Smart Growth Incentive Program. This may sound familiar because there was a previous request several weeks ago for the same grant opportunity for a capital improvement project. This time, it's a planning project that's before you requesting to submit for this grant opportunity. And this is a program that's funded by Transnet dollars, which is the half-cent sales tax approved back in 1988 to fund local transportation projects. It typically supports comprehensive public infrastructure projects. However, it also addresses projects for planning activities, so setting the plan before the construction, that facilitate increased housing, especially housing near transit-oriented locations, or facilitating mixed-use development. SANDAG is currently in cycle 6 and has called for projects, and they have 3 categories for those projects. One is the capital improvement projects, one is related to climate action plans, and the third is planning, so planning documents, which is what the Housing Trust Fund would fall under. So again, you previously saw a request to submit on behalf of the Grand Avenue Vision Plans Phase 3, and before you this evening is the request to submit a subsequent application for the East Valley Housing Trust Fund. So the proposal, East Valley Specific Plans Housing Trust Fund. The East Valley Specific Plan is a specific plan that was adopted a couple of years ago, back in July of 2023 by City Council for purposes of meeting our housing element certification. We allocated a number of new housing units within that area. And the Housing Trust Fund is an identified program within that specific plan. And it would only affect those projects that propose residential or mixed-use projects that develop below a certain threshold that's identified in the specific plan. There is a pathway, should this program come to fruition, for developers to opt out of having to pay into this fund. It would be to develop at the density identified within the specific plan. So to be clear, if this program were to be created at a future point, it isn't a ubiquitous, everyone has to pay this fee. There are avenues to not have to pay the fee and contribute to the Housing Trust Fund. So as part of the Housing Trust Fund, the city would seek to develop an in lieu fee through an empirical analytical study. So we would work with a consultant to develop a fee that is reasonable and in line with fee estimates of today. And the program itself would navigate through how this works, right? So the Housing Trust Fund is like a bank account. Funding would go into it. That funding would then theoretically be expended on housing development, and the city would control how that funding is expended. So as part of this larger program creation, staff would work to develop how does that funding application process work? How are those awards granted? How does selection of potential housing development occur, and what is the ultimate decision? Who receives that benefit? So I mentioned earlier, housing trust funds typically allow for greater local control because it's local dollars coming in, so it's not tied to federal or state funding sources necessarily. So there is the possibility to add that local component. And if we are authorized to submit for this grant application and we are subsequently awarded, the development of this program in totality would come back before the City Council for one ultimate decision, but also for feedback and direction throughout the development of the process. It would also require robust outreach and engagement with the East Valley specific plan community, so we would be looking for input on the program itself. And again, we'd return to council for ultimate decision. So this is just a high-level framework of what you would expect should you authorize grant submittal and should we be awarded. And then just to reiterate that the Housing Trust Fund is already adopted into several policy documents within the city. So the first is the East Valley Specific Plan, specifically Policy 2.8, which directs us to establish the trust fund, and then Housing Element Program 3.4, which again directs us to establish that trust fund. So next steps, if City Council were to approve the request this evening, we would submit the application requesting funding to SANDAG in full. SANDAG would then make their ultimate decisions, which we anticipate occurring in and around the last quarter of the year. So we would not know whether our project would be funded or selected for funding until later in 2025. And then once awarded funding and all the paperwork is taken care of, we estimate approximately 12 months to develop this program, to flesh it out, to go through the outreach and engagement process. So it's not something that would happen the next month, but it would be a bit of a long-range process. So again, the request is to submit for the funding opportunity to SANDAG and accept the terms of the grant agreement. And that concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Any public comments?
None.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. This one's intriguing, but ultimately I support this. I was able to ask my questions in the subcommittee meeting, so I'll turn it over to the council for discussion and a motion if anybody would like to make one.
I'll move to approve staff recommendation.
I second.
Perfect. Any other discussion or questions? None? Okay. Thank you, Veronica. We'll go ahead and vote.
Voting is open. Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you again. That was easy. I thought there'd be questions. We'll move on to item 12, which is the Escondido Municipal Code, Chapter 16, Article 8, regulating short-term rentals.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. Mike McGinnis, your city attorney. I'm going to have Zach help me through my slides because our clicker's missing. Tonight, I bring forward for your consideration ordinance number 2025-05, which provides for a few select amendments to ordinance number 2024-07R, which is the short-term rental ordinance. Slide. As you will recall, in the latter part of 2024, during several public economic development subcommittee meetings, the city undertook the study and consideration of a short-term rental ordinance to establish the regulations over the increased use of residential properties and units as short-term rental properties. A short-term rental unit or property is one being advertised and rented for dwelling or lodging for a duration of 30 days or less. In addition to trying to address the noise, traffic, and nuisance complaints that the police department and code officials were receiving, the city sought to capture lost temporary occupancy tax, or TOT, receipts that were not being submitted to the city. In January of this year, the full City Council adopted Ordinance 2024-07R, establishing a 3-year pilot short-term rental permitting and regulation program in Article 8 of Chapter 16, as well as amendments to the city's TOT code provisions in Article 4 of Chapter 25 to allow for collection of appropriate TOT for those transactions. Over the past few months, staff from numerous departments have been hard at work fully developing the application, inspection, and full program implementation. It's almost every department that you have in the city: business licensing, code, police, my office, planning, environmental compliance. Everyone's on board with trying to put this together. So staff have also been working with HDL, the city's business licensing consultant and vendor, who did foundational work on the ordinance, which was adopted in January. As the staff have more fully developed the processes to successfully run the program, there was an interest in adjusting and clarifying certain provisions in the original ordinance to ensure that the program and its enforcement run smoothly and effective enforcement can address the goals of the City Council in adopting the program. Next slide. There are three principal clarifications or changes to the original ordinance. The easiest way to see these changes in the context of the original language would be to view the strikeouts in Attachment 1 to the staff report at Agenda Package pages 117 through 125. The clean version incorporating those changes is provided in Exhibit A to the ordinance at pages 108 to 116. The first clarification is in Section 16-412, which makes clear that rental or leased properties are ineligible units under the program. Ineligible units are specifically defined in Section H, subsection H, to include such properties as ADUs, JADUs, SB 9 units, inclusionary housing, and any other state-restricted housing units. There are other references to the applicant host as being the property owner, but we wanted to make it clear that renters are ineligible applicants. As we looked at the potential for the city getting involved in tenant and landlord disputes about the ability to sublet to short-term users, we believe this is an appropriate and reasonable limitation on the applicant pool. Next, we removed a condition of having an infraction conviction as a requirement to the city being able to recover the tiered fine amounts for permit violations. The fine amounts of $1,000, $3,000, and $5,000 remain for first, second, and third violations in a year, respectively. But we wanted to untether the criminal component of this code fine structure and have greater success in recovering the appropriate administrative violation fines. A violation of the code remains prosecutable as a misdemeanor, so there is no decriminalizing of the program. The city's attorney's office has available to it all remedies, including criminal, civil, administrative avenues to enforce all of our program requirements. Finally, subsection C of section 1420, or 420, pardon me, as originally drafted, allowed for the appeal of a revocation of a permit based on identified permit violations. Upon further review of how staff will be processing the appeals, we recommend including allowance for an appeal of a suspension, given that it may operate similar to a revocation depending on the circumstances of that suspension, and to protect the ordinance from due process challenges. This added language forecloses any realistic claim that the program fails to afford permittees a reasonable opportunity to adequately challenge our permit enforcement remedies. Next, please. This proposed ordinance will only affect the specific changes being made to the underlying code provisions. And the original short-term rental ordinance, 2024-07R, will remain effective July 1, 2025. City staff is currently finalizing application forms, FAQs, and property inspection lists. Staff are also working through and finalizing full implementation of the program from initial application through final enforcement actions. We are set to begin implementation of application processing and issue permits on schedule. Because this amendment is by way of ordinance, it will require a second reading, which if adopted tonight will be June 25, and 30 days thereafter will be fully effective on July 25, 2025. So we don't see any impediment to going forward with the ordinance as is, which was with these slight changes, which will really be more effective later on. Next slide, thank you. Staff's recommendation is that the City Council introduce for first reading and adoption ordinance number 2025-05, amending select sections of the short-term rental ordinance. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Any public comments?
None.
Okay. I'll turn it over to the council for any questions or discussion. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just for my, so I did not support the short-term rental ordinance, so I just want to make sure that this is just specific to those codes, right? The Chapter 16, Article 8, the language in that item, correct?
That's correct. These are only select changes to the short-term rental ordinance.
Okay. So can you explain again? You mentioned something about subletting. Can you say that again?
Yes. In order to make sure that the definitions are consistent throughout the ordinance, we wanted to make sure that ineligible applicants or ineligible units are those that are rented. So what we didn't want to have is if a renter is not permitted under their lease or rental agreement to sublet, that they are now an applicant bringing in subleasees or subrenters by way of their program. We did not want to be a part of the landlord-tenant dispute that would be created there.
Okay. That makes sense.
And I think overall, it is, I think, fairly clear from other components of the ordinance that we were looking at property owners being able to do this, not renters.
Got it. And then the difference between the fines is pretty much changing, because you mentioned, if we can go back to that slide that talks about infraction versus administrative. Sorry, thanks, Zach.
Right, so under
Right,
section.
so remove infraction convictions and swap that out for administrative. And that's really just to be able to recover the cost. So the fines stay the same, it's just the, you know, how you get that fine changes so that you're more likely to recover the fine.
A little
Right.
bit different. The way it was originally written, it required a conviction of an infraction before you could then secure the administrative fines. We've removed the conviction of the infraction and just go right to the fine
Okay.
structure. But again, that doesn't decriminalize it to the extent we ever would do that. We still have it as a misdemeanor, and it can be charged as an infraction or it
Okay.
can be pled as an infraction.
Thanks for that clarification. So I have no problem with the cleanup language that you're proposing. You know, I still don't support the overall ordinance, but I'll support the language for these amendments. So I'll move to approve.
Thank you. I'll second it. Any other questions?
I have a comment. I just wanted to say I really appreciate all the work that went into this. I was on the Planning Commission when it came forward, and the concerns that we heard were about it being, about the rental or the vacation properties being too close to schools, and that was addressed with the 500 feet distance, which is excellent. And then also the sex offender part of it, making sure that the landlords have to or be put through the background check. And then also, another concern were false complaints. And speaking, looking into it and asking questions, it's just really good to know that there will be due diligence. It's not just going and citing people because a call was made, that the police officers are going to respond appropriately and make sure that it is accurate so no one loses a business just because they have a neighbor that may not like that. I think just excellent. This is really exciting. And I just think that the city manager's office and city attorney's office, I mean, you work together with police, fire, code compliance, information systems. There were so many people that did this, so good job, thank you.
I would also thank the members of the Economic Development Subcommittee who also spent a lot of time on this project.
Thank you. So being on the Economic Subcommittee, where we spent a lot of time working on this, the cleanup language is great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, clarifying the policy. But my only comment is this. I found myself this weekend chatting with some owners of short-term rentals here in Escondido, unknown to me. I didn't know this, and I was introduced to them, and we were chatting, and they found out that I lived in Escondido, and I was a council member. I said, oh, I have a short-term rental here in Escondido. And so we started chatting. I said, oh, well, there are changes coming, and we talked about this. He says, yeah, I heard about it. And then it was promptly said, yeah, it's true that there are renters that create a lot of problems for the community and the residents. And then he told me, you know, it's time to sell. So I found that very interesting, that the moment the city begins to take measures to ensure that there's rules as to how we are to deal with each other, at least this one owner clearly told me, yeah, it's time to sell and move on and invest somewhere else where there are no rules. So anyway, that's my comment.
Nothing? Okay. Thank you. I believe we have a motion and a second. Let's vote.
Voting is open. Motion approved, 5-0.
All right, item 13 is the Measure I Citizens Oversight Committee bylaws.
Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, Zach Beck, City Clerk, just going to review the Measure I bylaws with you. I want to provide you a few things to discuss this evening. First, background on Measure I. Second, the Measure I bylaws themselves, and then staff recommendation. Bit of background on Measure I. It was approved back in November 2024 with 61% vote approval. It was establishing a 1% sales tax in Escondido for 20 years, supporting public safety, infrastructure, homelessness, traffic relief, and open space. And the ordinance that is associated with that ballot measure requires a Citizens Oversight Committee. Now, a bit on the Citizens Oversight Committee itself. The purpose of the Oversight Committee is to ensure transparency and accountability in Measure I fund usage, as well as providing an annual audit report to the City Council. The structure in nature with this particular committee is that it's advisory. It does not have decision-making authority. It is comprised of 5 members and 1 alternate, 1 member from Escondido Police Officers Association, 1 from Escondido Firefighters Association, another from the business community, 1 from the San Diego County Taxpayers Association, a community at-large member, and an alternate who serves if a quorum cannot be met. The meetings are as follows. Although it is stipulated in the ordinance to only meet twice a year, as it relates to the Boards and Commissions Subcommittee that helped to craft these bylaws, they're extending that to have at least 6 meetings per year for the Oversight Committee. The meetings will be open to the public, quorums are required, and the following officers will be established, elected annually: a chair, a vice chair, as well as a secretary, and there's mandatory ethics training for all of the members. Now, a bit of background for the public on this. The appointments for the existing members, they had to be Escondido residents, no conflicts of interest. They will have a 2-year term and up to 3 consecutive terms. They are appointed and removed at the City Council's discretion. And the following members were approved and appointed on March 19th. For the business seat, it was Carol Rogers. The at-large seat was Sabrina Covington. The alternate is Carl Edward Trujillo, and they were interviewed from a broad applicant pool. Now, one worth noting is that the San Diego County Taxpayer Association does have a seat on the Oversight Committee. However, they have been contacted multiple times since passage of Measure I and have not responded. So we're in a position right now where the City Council may appoint an at-large candidate to the seat, or you can leave the seat vacant and then potentially even have the alternate sit in that seat if necessary. But that is where that seat stands at this present moment. The bylaws themselves. The bylaws we were directed during the March 5th workshop to have the Boards and Commissions Subcommittee review the bylaws, and they did so on March 31st as well as May 13th, and now they're coming before you for full recommendation for approval, as well as to be referred to the committee for their adoption, as it is their prerogative to adopt the bylaws as the Oversight Committee. Now, a few highlights of the bylaws themselves. The transparency and public access are key. First is there's open meeting compliance. All meeting materials and reports will be posted on the city's website. They will have the option to select an independent auditor, and this individual or group will conduct annual audits that are paid for by Measure I funds. The staff support for the Oversight Committee will be myself providing administrative support, the finance director providing detailed reports related to revenue expenditures, and then the city manager providing context and community engagement updates. Any unresolved procedural questions will be referred to the city attorney's office. In addition, we'll have a corresponding letter sent to the city, to the Citizens Oversight Committee, signed by Mayor White on behalf of the City Council. A few of the highlights of the letter are it's asking the committee to adopt the bylaws, ensuring that the Measure I funds are used in accordance with voter priorities, a commitment to transparency, and emphasizing the importance of the partnership and the council viewing the Oversight Committee playing an important role in managing the overall oversight of these finances. And then myself, I'm serving as the staff liaison for that committee. The recommendation is to approve the bylaws as well as the letter for committee consideration. And I can answer any questions you may have. And there's no public for this item.
Okay, perfect. No public comments on this item. Yes, I support the bylaws as presented. It was nice we did have some members of the Oversight Committee helping to steer that in some of our subcommittee meetings. So I'll go ahead and move to approve the bylaws. Ask for a second, and we'll open it up for discussion. Perfect. Motion second. Deputy Mayor, you want to?
Thank you for working on the bylaws, and I'm glad that some of the members of the, even though they haven't met officially yet, that they were there so that they had hopefully some input in this. Question on the Taxpayer Association seat. I understand that, you know, there's been a lot of transition at that organization. Did you want to chime in on that?
Well, it would be there's been a lot of transition and turnover at the organization. It would be the city manager's recommendation to have the group meet for the first time. If the Taxpayers Association does not appear, that will be a fully public moment and accountability, and then council, I think, would be clear in the feedback to then move to make a subsequent appointment. Because it would be public meeting, we'll notice them that the public meeting's coming up.
Yeah.
They have their last opportunity to appear, and then it would flip to the council. So it's really clear and public. It's not a question about the numbers of communications that have been out there.
Okay, yes, and if for some reason, I was just gonna comment that, I know that there's an option to appoint the alternate, but, being that was some type of, a taxpayer association seat, I would even be open to, depending on what happens, making that be someone that has like a financial accounting background, I think would seem appropriate for that seat. Just wanted to put that out there. But I will go ahead and support the motion.
Councilmember Fitzgerald, do you have anything? Okay.
So I went through the bylaws, very thorough, and I thought it was a great job putting it all together. And one of the things that I thought was very, very important and clearly demonstrates the transparency that we're all looking for is the independent auditor. So thank you very much for including that. And as I seconded, I also support the form in which these bylaws are being presented.
All right, if there's no other questions or comments, we'll go ahead and vote.
Voting is open. Motion approved, 5-0.
Awesome, thank you all. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to a future agenda?
Yes, I do. I'd like to put on the future agenda here, probably because of a time situation within this month, because we'll be off a couple of weeks in July, regarding the Fiber City work strategy, an explanation of the work that they've been doing, what's going on. The community is expressing a series of concerns of their work practices, so I'd like to put that on the agenda.
I'll second.
Perfect. Anything else? If not, we'll move on to council member subcommittee reports. Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Let's see. So on Monday, I went to the Cal Cities meeting that was up here in San Marcos, and it was really good to see the North County Economic Development Commission presenting there, and we work with them here in the city, and for them to be able to come up here and discuss all the opportunities that there are here in partnerships with Mira Costa College, Palomar College, and Cal State San Marcos. Today, I attended the Escondido Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Luncheon as their guest speaker, and it was really good to be able to give them an update as to what the city is doing internally to improve our services, and then also what is happening with the website being live in some areas and some other resources that we're able to offer. And as everyone knows, we're having on Friday the Grand Avenue ribbon cutting at 5:30 and Cruise and Grand. Saturday, it is Flag Day celebration at the American Legion here in Escondido. I believe it starts at 11. We'll have to double check on that. And for all you fathers, stepfathers, father figures, happy Father's Day on Sunday.
Thank you.
Councilman Garcia.
A few things. People are really excited. Cruising Grand is starting. People are really excited about that. So am I, and I'm glad that we'll have the ribbon cutting together with that beginning. I think that's awesome. I missed last meeting because I was at Orange Glen High School graduation. My stepdaughter was graduating, so I missed our meeting. So my report's going to contain some information from before. For that, I had a North County Dispatch JPA board meeting during this period of time. I also had a large city council meeting with National League of Cities. I had a Sandag Regional Transportation Committee, a Rotary mixer for Route 78 and After 5. Today I had an NCTD MISBITA committee, which is their marketing and business committee. I had the opportunity to chair that committee. And as usual, I've been meeting with residents and community leaders to discussing different things that are important to our community. So that concludes my report.
Last week, I had the opportunity to be the keynote speaker at Innovations High School for their graduating class, where Councilmember Christian Garcia works, and that was a lot of fun. We had our budget subcommittee where we received the same report you saw today. And on Saturday was the closing ceremonies for Escondido American Little League, where I declared the day Escondido American Little League Day. And then on Monday, I had my monthly meeting with Interfaith CEO Greg, where we reviewed some of the numbers for the people coming into detox in Escondido. And I will say it looks promising. He's going to come to the city council, I believe, in a few weeks or next month to share that with the city council. But overall, it's been a success. And that concludes my report. Councilman Garcia.
All right. As mentioned last week, my school had a graduation ceremony here at the Center for the Arts. Thank you, Mayor, for being the keynote speaker. The school that I teach at serves underprivileged kids, underserved communities, and just hearing, the story that the mayor gave was really inspiring. So again, thank you. We had the budget subcommittee, as the mayor mentioned, and it reviewed a lot of what we had talked about today. The Old World Meat Company, which is at the East Valley Parkway, they had their grand opening, or grand reopening, I should say. Really, there's a small family, local, great food, great family more than anything, and they're really part of the community. If you have the opportunity to go, I would really recommend it. We were able to present them a certificate of recognition there. We had been speaking with the Clean Energy Alliance. We're really trying to get a lot of things going. The biggest thing, and I said this last week, is that as the summer comes, I really encourage the public to do the programs that are offered. The two that I personally am in is the OHM program, that's OHM, and then the Peak Saver program. Those are two programs that are really good if you're looking to save energy. They just send notifications throughout the month, throughout the week, telling you when to shut things down, and then the Peak Saver program is telling you if there's going to be a potential blackout, so you essentially have to just turn everything off, but you get up to 30% off of your energy bill if you go along with the program. So not 30% off your energy bill, 30% off of certain hours of energy use. So want to be very specific. Please, please, please look into that, though. I really encourage everybody to really participate in those programs. It's a good opportunity to save money. The CEA, we're also looking at different programs through different that I'm working with different organizations with that talk about thermal cooling. So it's a natural way to cool systems. Right now we're looking at commercial, but we're looking to expand on that. Again, I think there's some promise there, so keep an eye out for that. There's going to be a planned protest this Saturday. If you are participating in the protest, as always, please, we encourage you to be peaceful and just make sure that we are doing everything correctly. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers on Sunday, as mentioned by my colleague. And regarding the protests, I'm sorry, one more thing, is that if you are going to be participating in them, be in communication with our police, with city leaders, anybody, just to make sure that things go smoothly. And then, as always, thank you to my community for the privilege of serving you.
Thank you, Mayor. So last Thursday, I had the opportunity to join the YMCA for their annual their bike giveaway. They gave away 28 bikes and helmets to children from Lincoln Elementary, and it was awesome to see the excitement and joy in their faces. Sergeant Matt from our police department was there with cool snap reflector bracelets. and bike lights. It was a true team effort, and they all got to learn. They all got fitted with the helmets, so they also got helmets and learned how to safely use the bicycle. On Saturday, I had the pleasure of joining other North County elected officials and community members at the 18th Annual Pride at the Beach celebration in Oceanside. It was a beautiful event that highlighted the importance of inclusion and visibility in our region. On Monday, I also attended the League of California Cities San Diego County Division meeting. These meetings are usually, we take turns between hybrid virtual and then usually at a location in central San Diego. So this was the first time that it was held in North County in San Marcos. So of course I went. I appreciated it being close to home. And yes, the panel, the focus was on economic development in our region in North County. In addition to the Cal State San Marcos, Miracosta, and Palomar was also the San Diego County Workforce Partnership. It was great to hear about their collaborative efforts to train our future workforce for jobs that are coming. Cal State San Marcos also shared that they're going to be, their plans for a future integrated science and engineering building, which will allow them to expand engineering enrollment from hundreds to thousands, and this will definitely be a game changer for North County. I will also be at the ribbon cutting on Grand Avenue this Friday at 5:30 to celebrate completion of our construction and improvements in downtown to kick off Cruising Grand. Hope to see many of you there, and congratulations to all of those who have been promoted, graduations. I know that's been happening the last couple of weeks, and happy Father's Day and Flag Day. Happy Flag Day this weekend. Thank you.
City Manager,
Nothing to report.
do we have any other non-agenda comments? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.